A list of 8 factors needed to create realistic art without including the most crucial factor of them all. What gives? Hey there, Lance here again, and I just recently read an article on the 8 factors needed to create realistic art. As someone who paints realism, it surprised me that the article completely left out the factor that ties it all together, and that factor is texture. I'm not talking about the texture that we as artists sometimes use with the thickening mediums or the addition of other materials to our paints. More so, the texture as it applies to making those objects look as if they are textured. Texture is a part of life. We see it in everything that exists, from the rocks and the sand at the beach, the bark and leaves of a tree, right down to our own skin. Texture exists, and as an artist, we must include it if we're shooting for realism. It's the difference from an ordinary painting becoming an extraordinary work of art. Now that we see how crucial texture is to our paintings, let's take a look at one of the easiest techniques that I've found to obtain it in our paintings. Okay, before we begin, let me show you the equipment that we're going to use for this demonstration. The paints we have on the palette there, the brushes and the medium. Let's go into the brushes first. The brush we have here is just an older round brush. You can see that the bristles are a little bit splayed out. That's perfect for this technique. The next two are comber brushes. They are also a bit older, one newer. Their bristles are also a little splayed out on the older brush. Next brush is a tree and texture brush, just specifically designed for this technique. A little bit harder bristle, but you'll see with this technique that's all right as well. The last two brushes that we have here are a couple of mop brush and a stippling brush. Stippling brush has a lot of different bristles in it, and it's a little bit older, but that's great for this technique. The paints we're going to use, we're going to keep it simple. We have a collection from Williamsburg on neutral grays, all the way up from lighter to darker. We're going to use a yellow ochre, and we're going to use a ultramarine blue. Those are both from Blue Ridge. And the only medium that we're going to need for this is liquid original. That's going to be key to how I'm demonstrating it today. But if you're an acrylic artist, you can also get away with a glazing medium. The same thing, it'll work just perfectly fine. And obviously the element that we need now is the canvas that we're going to demonstrate on. For this instance, I just have a piece taped to a panel. It'll work fine for this demonstration. As you can tell, I've already taken the liberty to draw in our subject matter for this demonstration. I applied a grid onto the piece of substrate there and drew in roughly where I thought the rocks would be for the demonstration. I'll put up the picture of the actual reference just so you can see what I'm looking at as we continue along this demonstration. The first thing obviously we need to do is go ahead and block in our subject matter. In this case, it's the rocks. What I generally like to do is I'll find a happy medium between the highest value of dark and the highest value of light, and find that middle ground tone to paint the entire scene with first. Let that dry, and then we can come in with our actual texture technique. For the sake of keeping this video relatively short, we'll go ahead and hit you with the time lapse of me blocking in this subject, and we'll be back when it's time to actually get into the action of texture. Okay, let's slow this down so we can investigate the technique of applying texture to our painting. The first thing we'll do is select the color we'd like to start with. In my case, I'll start with the darkest of the neutral grays. I'll then combine it with the liquid original. Acrylic painters, you'll be using a glazing medium. The mixture we're shooting for is that of a glaze, not dark enough to overpower the block in, but still strong enough to slightly adjust the previous layer's color. After we've gotten the mixture correct, we'll then take our selected brush. For me, it was the splayed round brush, and apply it to the canvas. This is a gentle tap stroke, kind of like a stipple. We're looking to apply it in the areas where we see texture in the reference. There's really no incorrect way to do this. In fact, depending on the subject, I've gotten away with just doing the entire thing. Remember, this isn't meant to be the final look. We're just looking for texture. Don't be afraid to experiment with this technique. Try some different brushes. As you can tell, I've switched over to a different brush just to see what application it might have. As long as your underpainting is completely dry, This technique is foolproof. You can always just grab a paper towel or a rag and wipe it completely off and start again. What I really love about this technique is the universal nature of it. Since texture is in all aspects of life, why shouldn't it be in our paintings, especially if we're shooting for realism? Here you'll see me applying it to the underwater sandy areas, but I've also been known, like stated earlier, to apply it to many different aspects of the painting. Texture is really key to connecting realism in our art. That pretty much does it for this technique. Obviously, this is not where we leave off the painting of these rocks. I'll go back in once it's dry and then add more highlights and more shadows and connect it really to our reference. But here in a second, I'll show you a few of the paintings that I've done in the past that you can really see where texture makes it key to making those pictures look photorealistic. Well, there you have it. Hopefully this demonstration will aid you in your painting endeavors. As you can see, that the texture is very easy to apply. It's very crucial to our paintings if we're shooting for that realistic approach. You can take this demonstration and this technique and apply it to rocks, to sand, to trees, wherever you see texture in the world around us that you're trying to paint. Use this technique and I guarantee you our paintings will come out more realistically looking than they did without using it. Until next time, happy painting.